To dome or not to dome? That is the question. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here, then please do me a favour and hit that subscribe button. We're at that point in the NFL off-season. We've had rookie minicamp. We're all waiting for the proper off-season events to get going, i.e. mandatory minicamp, training camp and all of that stuff. We're kind of in that limbo period in between. Everyone's scratching the barrel, trying to find some news, trying to find some stuff to talk about. This is usually when you get, the classic culprits doing the clickbait stuff, because what else have they got to drive engagement for their websites? You won't find any clickbait stuff here. Maybe occasionally I might, over-exaggerate the thumbnail a little bit, just to get people to click on the video. But there's no clickbait here in the actual sense. Any of my subscribers will know by now, I just say it how I feel. I'm not trying to drive up engagement for a website for you guys. These are my genuine thoughts. But as I said, we are in that kind of period where, there isn't that much to talk about. That is kind of proved by the fact that, we've had a genuine conversations on Twitter and, Twitter meltdowns and posts and shares. And as I said, clickbait about Shedeur Sanders signing his rookie contract. I mean, very odd. Yes, draft picks might not sign their contract straight away, but that team still owns their rights regardless. It was almost as if, people thought that, oh, that's all right, he can't sign anywhere else now. It's like, well, no, he was a draft pick. This is just him finally agreeing on the deal. The deal itself, $4.6 million over 4 years for a fifth-round pick. Pretty decent. Might be the largest contract total in for a fifth-round pick in NFL history. I'd have to double-check that. But it's $4.6 million over 4 years. Shedeur Sanders probably would have made more than that, just 1 year on NIL at college. So, and Quinn Ewers got 4.3 as a seventh-round pick. So, it just kind of shows you that the quarterbacks demand a little bit more money, even if they were drafted fifth round or later. But that has no relevance to this video, so I'm sorry for going on a bit of a tangent. Because what I actually want to talk about today, as I said, not much NFL news to talk about. So, of course, anytime we get any news about the Browns' potential new stadium in Brook Park, it generates a lot of discussion, a lot of debate, a lot of arguments on social media amongst Browns fans. Maybe not as much now as it was last year. I think it was kind of this time last year when the first rumors, came out and were leaked that the Browns were, potentially planning on looking at moving to Brook Park for a new stadium. We've been talking for a decade. I say we, not just me, but anyone associated with the Browns have been talking for a decade, it feels like now, about how much, the current Cleveland Browns stadium, because I'm not calling it Huntington Banfield, needs renovation, needs a lot of stuff doing to it. And kind of, it's been, what do they do? Do they just try and paint over the cracks at the current stadium, or do they just bite the bullet, go spend the money and go build one of these newer modern stadiums that we see in the NFL nowadays, like the Vikings, like the Rams stadium? So, those rumors came out. I think a lot of people at first were maybe not as on board with the idea of the Browns moving to Brook Park. A lot of people were, arguing that it's similar to the team moving to Baltimore, even though Brook Park is about 15-minute drive from downtown Cleveland. It still is in Cleveland. But before I go into it, I do just want to preference that I understand that obviously as an international fan, as someone that is not a Cleveland native, it's not really my place to be telling Cleveland natives what they should feel and how they should react to news about, potentially moving stadiums. I've said this all along, so, whilst I have my own opinions on it, I recognise that my opinions don't mean anything, and they shouldn't, because as I said, I'm not living in Cleveland. I'm a random British dude. What I think doesn't matter. And of course, whether you're team dome or team not, that's fine with me, because as I said, I could be on one side of this in terms of my opinion, but I'm just a random British guy. I should have no say on this. But that doesn't mean I don't have my own opinions. And my opinion, if you don't follow me on social media, or if you do follow me on social media, you will know this by now. I've posted about it many a times. But I am Team Dome, 100%. Have been since the initial rumours came out, and have been all the way through. The biggest reason for me why I'm Team Dome, I just think domes are better. Yes, I understand the whole, you're getting rid of any kind of weather advantage, any kind of home field advantage like that. But my counter argument to that is, what have the Browns done with that home field advantage, since 1999 in the current stadium? Absolutely fuck all is what they've done with that advantage. I've seen the Saints, a dome team, come and absolutely slap the Cleveland Browns at their stadium in the snow. If a dome team can come and do that to you, and a dome team, from New Orleans especially, then you don't really have a home field advantage that people try and make it out. So the biggest thing for me is just the attraction of a new stadium. The Browns have never hosted a Super Bowl. We've never been to a Super Bowl. This might be our best chance. You get one of these new dome stadiums, you get a Super Bowl. You look at the Vikings, they built theirs. They pretty sure got a Super Bowl within 3 years. The Rams pretty much got a Super Bowl the next year. Build it and they will come is kind of the how it works with these new stadiums, and how the NFL dishes out its Super Bowl stadium allocation. So you're going to get that benefit. You're also going to get all year round events. The Browns' current stadium, if an artist comes, they have to be careful about what months they do it in. If anything comes, the WWE or AEW, whatever the other one's called, I'm sorry, I'm not a wrestling fan, or the Monster Truck stuff, the Monster Jam, that can only be done in about 3 months of the year at the current stadium, just because of the weather. Having a dome means that doesn't matter. You can have events all year round. You can bring more money into the stadium. So it's just a no-brainer for me. I just, as I said, I've got no place to say this, but I just don't understand why anyone wouldn't want the dome, over the current stadium. Maybe, yes, some people would prefer that they tried to build a dome, in downtown Cleveland. That's just not really possible with the kind of, with all the kind of infrastructure that's already there. That's not really possible. There is a reason why Brook Park was identified as the best location for this dome. So, if you want a dome, it has to be at Brook Park. So you kind of you have to basically give and take in that scenario. But as I said, biggest reason why I want a dome is how much that just improves your team's stadium, how much more attention you get, how much more opportunities you get. But then I would be lying if I sat here and said there isn't another reason why. The Brook Park Dome in particular, of course, is very appealing to me as a British fan. Hopkins Airport, the airport that, you fly into if you're flying into Cleveland from, well, anywhere, but especially from the UK, is located at Brook Park. Anyone who's done that trip would know that it can be quite time consuming, quite expensive, flying into Hopkins and then getting yourself downtown, getting the hotel downtown, I mean, God, even the travel downtown is bad enough as it is paying for an Uber. So with having the Brook Park Stadium literally by the airport, it just makes it 1,000 times easier for international fans coming over to visit. As I said, that should not be anything that the Cleveland Browns consider when building the stadium. The first and foremost they should be considering is the Cleveland natives and the people living in Cleveland. But as I said, I would be lying if I sat here and said that, of course, is not an appealing outcome for me, because it would just make coming over for a game a lot easier. You know, as I said, instead of having to get to Hopkins and then get downtown, whether that's Uber, whether even if you know someone, they're probably going to still ask for some money, and then obviously having to get hotels and stuff downtown. Yes, a dome's probably going to see some price increases for just general stadium stuff. You know, the tickets are probably going to be more expensive. The confectionery and all of that stuff is going to be more expensive. Of course it is. That's always going to be the way with a newer stadium. But I think the money saved for international fans just getting downtown alone will make up for those stadium price increases. So it's a no-brainer for me. As I said, I've been Team Dome all along, but it has been interesting to see how the other kind of viewpoints on it, from whether that's fans, whether that's the team, whether that's the Greater Cleveland or the Cleveland City Council. We have seen a lot of movement, shall we say, in the kind of public opinion. When this rumor first came out and I first started speaking about it, I'll be honest, I almost felt like I should probably stop, because a lot of people were calling me out. A lot of people were attacking me, shall we say, for talking about it and wanting the dome. And the public discourse seemed to quite easily be heavily dominated by, the large majority of people wanting to stay downtown and even stay in the current stadium, let alone renovating it over moving to a dome in Brook Park. But over the last year, that's definitely changed a lot. I can post on Twitter about my admiration for a dome, and it's mostly positive and mostly people agreeing now. So the public opinion, I think, has massively swayed, and then even the government and city opinion has swayed. I mean, most of the councils were against the dome at first, but now, I think it was yesterday, Greater Cleveland Partnership, they backed the Browns' plan for a dome stadium in Brook Park. They are on board. Yes, the Cleveland City Council are still not on board. They've been trying absolutely everything they can to try and... I think they know they've lost the fight, but they're trying everything they can to at least get public opinion more back onto their favour. They've talked about all the different things that wouldn't be able to happen and all of this stuff, but I think none more ridiculous than the other day when they essentially released posts and comments about how if the Browns move to Brook Park, they cannot guarantee that the Goodyear blimp will be able to fly over for games. Not sure who or how they thought that would even remotely sway public opinion. I'm not sure about you guys, but I couldn't give the slightest fuck about the Goodyear blimp flying over the stadium. And even so, we'll be in a dome. Will we even be able to see it? Probably not. You could just play footage of it on the bid screen and people will think it flew over. It doesn't actually have to fly over. So I think, as I said, I think they know they've lost, and I think that's proved by the fact that they're now just throwing anything at the wall and hoping it will stick. As I said, trying to use the Goodyear blimp as a way of motivating people against the Brook Park move. But overall, as I said, I am Team Dome. I always have been. I always will. Yes, people can point to, oh, well, look at the lack of success for dome teams and in the playoffs and all of this stuff. I don't really buy into that. I don't think whether or not your stadium has a roof actually has a effect on that kind of stuff. I think that's more just coincidental and, not really correlated in any way. Yes, of course, there are some quarterbacks out there, i.e. a Jared Goff, that, the stats quite clearly show that they play better in a dome, but, that just takes away so much other context of, well, okay, they play in a dome stadium, and especially in some of these divisions where, most of the teams have a dome stadium. So they only played, 4 games, let's say, not in a dome that season. And then you go and look at the context and realise, well, yeah, the other quarterback was shit as well because it was 100-mile-an-hour winds. It was torrential rain. It was a snowstorm. So that stuff doesn't really get factored in when people talk and use these stats of like, oh, well, look at this guy's performance in his dome versus not in the dome. Well, okay, but he only played 3 non-dome games and they were all, terrible weather games. That's another big reason that I forgot, I suppose. It is the weather, not just as a fan, but as a fan of, as a fan sitting there in the stadium, but as a fan of the sport itself. I've made it very, very clear that I'm not just a Cleveland Browns fan. I am an NFL fan as a whole. I love the sport. I'm a big nerd when it comes to the sport. And, that means I want to see good football. And yes, you get the odd snow game, especially the Browns Steelers last season, where it is special, and the drop off in play doesn't bother you as much because you get to have a kind of awesome moment like that. But more often than not, games are ruined by weather, and if it's not snow, it looks shit, and I don't want that. I want my team to be, to have to have the best resources available to go and win. I don't want my team to lose a game because it was raining and the ball slipped out of the running back's hands in the fourth quarter. I don't want my team to lose the game because of, a gust of wind blew the ball, the kicker's kick or something, and it missed by half an inch. I don't want those things to happen. If the Cleveland Browns lose, I want it to be because they were the worst team in that game. I don't want it to be any other reason. I know with the Browns, they will find a million different ways of losing, but that's just how I feel. And then, of course, as the fan, and especially as an international fan as well, yes, it's selfish of me to say, but, I don't want to spend all the money and the time coming over to a game to then sit there in, I was about to say 2 degrees Celsius, but obviously Americans use Fahrenheit. So whatever that is in Fahrenheit, very cold, let's just say that. I don't want to come over, spend all that time, all that money, all them resources, and basically spend the entire game with something wrapped around me, not even be able to see the pitch because there's so much snow. Again, yes, that is selfish. Of course it is. But, we're all selfish when it comes to our fandoms. We want to see what we want to see. And that's just how I feel. So, to kind of wrap it up and not go too much on a tangent about this, yes, I understand why some people don't want to move. I understand, after what the Browns went through with Art Modell moving the team to Baltimore, the idea of just moving them a meter is worrying and scary for Browns fans because, you get those memories coming back to you and the PTSD of that whole shit show coming back to you. So I completely understand. But I suppose what I would say to those people is, go on to Google Maps and, put in Brown's current stadium and then put in the Brook Park location. It's not very far at all. Yes, being downtown gives you that environment and it gives you that atmosphere a bit more, but that doesn't mean that can't be replicated in Brook Park, and I think it will be replicated in Brook Park. I don't think the move is going to, soften the kind of atmosphere and stuff around game days. I still think game days are going to be as good as any other team in the NFL. All the tailgating will still be there if not at a more bigger location with you can get more people there. So I just think, if you are against it, that's completely fair. You are entitled to that opinion. But for me, I am 100% Team Dome. Yes, as I said at the start, my opinion shouldn't matter, doesn't matter. I'm a random British guy. Why should I have any say about where the Cleveland Browns play their games? But from a purely selfish and personal view on it, I want the stadium to be, I want the Dome, and I want it to be at Brook Park, because, boy, will those game days for international fans be made a lot more straightforward. Hopefully be able to get to more games with that as well. So, yeah, I'm Team Dome. Completely understand why people are against it, but let me know your thoughts. If you're Team Dome, if you're Team Dome, let me know why. Is it the fact that you just want to be in the Dome? Is it the fact that as I said at the start, you get more opportunities for the Super Bowl and all of this stuff? Or is it just the fact that you don't, as I said, you just don't want to see football in bad weather? And then vice versa, if you are against the Dome, let me know why. Comment your reasons. Is it because, as I said, you just don't want the team to move? Would you prefer a renovation? Would you prefer a dome downtown? Maybe it's not the Dome that is annoying you, it's just the move. But whatever it is, let me know in the comments. We can all have these conversations in a good faith way. I always try to do that. On Twitter and all of that crap, people are going to argue about this stuff. I mean, we're Browns fans arguing with each other about where we want to see our team play. It's pretty ridiculous. We shouldn't be arguing and at each other's throats over this. We should be willing to hear other people's opinions on it, and give our thoughts on it as well. That's what fans should do when they have conversations about these things. But as I said, let me know in the comments what you guys think. But for me, Team Dome. But that would do it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you do enjoy my content, then please drop this video a like. Hit the subscribe button. It's free, but it really, really helps out my channel. You can also check the links in the description to see where you can follow and interact with me on social media. As I always say, I'm trying to build a community of Cleveland Browns fans, and even if that means I only get to talk to one fan a day, I'm happy, because I'm talking Browns football with the best fan base in the world. Thanks again for watching, guys. Have an amazing rest of the week. We got the owners meeting as I speak. I'll be doing a video on that either today or tomorrow. But enjoy the rest of your week as much as you can. Weekend will soon roll on. But most importantly, go Browns.